Welcome, everyone. We'll give everybody just one more minute to get logged in here, and we'll get started at 12:31, if that's okay. Thanks for joining. All right, Katie, should we go ahead and get started? Yep, cool. Thumbs up. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this afternoon for our live cooking demo with Chef Tanya from the UK Food Connection. We're really, really excited about this recipe that she is going to show us today. That's going to highlight butternut squash, radicchio, and kale, which may be showing up in your CSA boxes this week or in the coming weeks as we enter into the fall CSA season. So I think most of you, well, before I introduce myself, just quick little housekeeping. Feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go along. And you all should have known when you logged in that it is being recorded. So hope you're okay with that. But please feel free to drop questions in the chat and we'll get those answered as we go along. So I think most of you know me, but for those of you who don't, I'm Ashton Potter-Wright. I'm the Director of Local Food and Agricultural Development for the City of Lexington, and I manage the Bluegrass Farm to Table program and the city's Workplace Wellness CSA program. And delighted to be here today with Chef Tanya Whitehouse, the Program Manager at the UK Food Connection. You'll get to hear from her, the main event, in just a couple of minutes. So I think the couple names I recognize on here have been longtime members or participants in the City of Lexington CSA voucher program. So thank you and welcome again. But for those of you who may be watching this at a later time, the City of Lexington launched a workplace wellness CSA voucher program in 2017 with 4 partner farms from the Kentucky Farm Share Coalition. Katie Harvey, thanks to her and Brooke Gentile for putting this cooking demo together for us today, but really have appreciated their partnership over the last 5 years in helping connect City of Lexington employees with certified organic farms in the central Kentucky area. So we're currently in our 5th year of offering this voucher program. So it's a $200 employer sponsored contribution towards the CSA purchase of folks choosing with one of these 4 partner farms. And we have offered historically a workplace pickup. So farms deliver to the government center, downtown Lexington, and folks, employees, if they want to, if that's convenient for them, in their office space, they're able to pick up their shares on Thursdays afternoon. We are really excited to announce that we have doubled the budget for this program. So therefore, doubling the number of employees that can participate for the 2022 season. And we are also in the process of expanding the number of partner farms that will be available for folks to choose from for next season. So we're in the application review process for that, and more information will be forthcoming about the additional options that will be available for the 2022 season. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Chef T to share with us this delicious roasted and sauteed veggie fall delight. So Chef T, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Ashton. I appreciate it. I appreciate you joining us this afternoon. It's been a busy week for everyone, what with the holidays. So thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm going to go through this rather quickly for those of you who have the recipe in front of you. I usually say I'm the guide and the recipe's the map, and I'm just here to kind of let you know how to use the map. We're going to start with the butternut squash. Now, mine aren't that large. I selected ones that are kind of small to begin with. You can see this is for a hand, just to let you know, this is a pretty small one. You may get ones of different sizes, or you may get other squash like delicata, kabocha, turban, acorn, something like that. So this will work well with any of those. Your recipe starts out by saying peeling and chopping this into chunks. I want to give you a little chef hack on that really quick. It is so much easier to peel a hard fall or winter squash when it's been par cooked a little bit. So I stuck these in the oven. My oven is at 400 today, so anything that I do is going to be at 400 degrees. This went a little too far. Probably about 10 minutes for one this size, maybe a little bit more for one that's bigger. I did let this go 15 minutes, so we do have a lot of caramelization on here that I didn't intend to do. But anyway, just have your butternuts, or any of your squash, really have them. That's the hardest part. I usually like to take an ice cream scoop or a portion scoop and scoop out the seeds because it's clean. It usually does it in one scoop if you have the right size, or two. It's much quicker than trying to scrape it out with a silverware spoon. Put it on a sheet tray, little brush of oil, salt, pepper if you want to go ahead and start seasoning. Pardon. And then into the oven for about 10 minutes. Pull it out, and when it's cool enough, then you can start taking the peel off. It will be still a little bit crunchy on the inside, even if the outside is kind of soft. So I'm going to take that stem off, throw it in a discard pan. And I also like separating the neck from the bowl, because the bowl is always much softer and a little bit more difficult to deal with. Now that I have the neck like this, I'm going to cut away from myself. If you don't want to use a big chef's knife for this, a paring knife works just fine. Peelers, I find once a vegetable has been cooked, peelers get hung up, but you certainly can use a peeler. Just know that it might be a little bit more frustrating than trying to peel a raw vegetable. I almost always par cook fall and winter squash. There's only one recipe I don't, and that's because you want it to absorb the flavor of the sauce it's going into. So I go ahead and go through the hard work of peeling it raw. So I'm going to cut these, even though it said to chunk. I'm cutting these in half moons because I want to show you something with the plating when we get there. So I'm cutting these into half moons. I've got some chunks pre-cut right here, so we can see that as well. As you can see, when you get to the bowl, just take the skin off the end, and again, cut away from yourself. You'll have to be a little bit extra gentle with the bowl because it is softer. And next side. Okay, and then just slice these into half moons. Oh, let me get this little caramelized bit there. There we go. Now I'm going to put these in the same bowl with the chunks, even though they're a little bit bigger. And a tiny bit more oil, another sprinkle of salt and pepper, and then actually we'll put that on here, and then we'll go back into the oven. Now I have a convection oven that's on 400 right now, and it's good and hot. So I'm only going to put these back in for about 5 minutes. You want to spread them out in a single layer. And give them room, because if they're too close together, they just steam and you don't get any caramelization. So we want to give them all of the surfaces to catch the heat. I'm going to go in now. I have set myself a 5-minute alarm because even on the best of days, I can get distracted and burn. And I don't want to burn the beautiful squash that the farmers have taken so much effort to grow. Next, we're going to do the onion. I've got a whole red onion here. I just like red for it's got a little bit more in-depth flavor, and of course the beautiful reddish purple color that will complement our radicchio. I barely took off a little bit from the root end and the stem end, and I'm gonna cut it in half. But I'm gonna get this close to the camera. It's still got a lot of the core, or what was left of the root on the inside. The core is left. We want that core. Normally I take that off, but we want that core. And try to make sure that you keep a little bit of the core every time you divide this up. Now I've divided it into quarters because that's going to make it easier for me to get the skin off, the papery bit. And I usually take the next layer too, because those are often leathery or thick. They're not pleasant to eat one way or another. So I take that off, and we're going to cut these into wedges. I'm going to take thirds out of each of these quarters, I think, as long as I have my core in there. All you need is a tiny bit of that core to hold these pieces together. So you want to be careful and make sure that you have that core, because that's going to hold your little strips of onion together so that you get a big chunk of onion, and it'll caramelize on the outside and just cook slightly and get nice and sweet on the inside when you roast. This is one of my favorite things to do once it's cool enough to turn your oven on. And now a lot of times you've seen me, I'll toss things in a bowl, you just did, and with the oil, but because these are kind of delicate and I don't want them to fall apart, I'm going to do the same with the radicchio. I'm just going to lay them on the sheet pan. Make sure there's room again. Try to use the smaller one. And coat them with oil, salt, and pepper. I'm going to put my hand over this because I just want a little drizzle. Enough to kind of fall down in between all those layers and give us a nice bit of browning. If you want, you can use a pastry brush or your fingers just to kind of spread that around. Make sure it's evenly distributed. Make sure there's some on the bottom. Make sure it's I sort of slide them around. And then give that a little sprinkle of salt. Go ahead and start that seasoning. Pop that in the oven. Lastly, we have this beautiful radicchio. If you're not friends with chicories, that's the family here, you should really become acquainted with this vegetable. They're beautiful, first of all. This is the family that includes radicchio and endive, or endive if you're fancy. But there's also just some beautiful variety in this family, absolutely gorgeous. A lot of people avoid it because it has some bitterness to it, but it's just a little kind of back end flavor. And what's nice about that is that bitterness goes really well with sweet, with salty, and with sour or acidic foods. Again, we want to try to keep that core intact. So we're going to go straight through the middle so that we have plenty there. And I'm going to do the quarters again. And I'll probably just cut these quarters in half. This is a kind of nostalgic recipe for me. The first night I ever worked at Holly Hill Inn, I was being trained on salads, and we were roasting radicchio that night. And because the woman was training me and I was new, we burned it 2 times. So for an order, not the best impression the first night, eh? But yeah, so this is one of the first dishes I ever created. Well, one of the first dishes was with roasted radicchio. So it's a very nostalgic, and 13 years ago, almost to the day, yesterday would have been my 13th anniversary. So this is a very nostalgic technique here. Again, I'm just drizzling, and you can just rub your radicchio around in the oil if you want. I don't want to have to wash my hands on camera, so I'm going to use the brush, a little bit of salt. Now, radicchio will come out first. Oh, there's my squash alarm. This takes about 7 minutes in a 400-degree oven. It depends on how big your wedges are. We need to leave the squash in there another minute or 2. While we do that, I'll show you the other ingredients that we'll be including. We've got half a cup of pine nuts, and we're going to toast those. I'm turning my burner on about medium heat, and I've got a dry saute pan. I'm going to see if you can, let's see if we can kind of just tilt. So back here in the back, I've got a very dry saute pan, and I've just got a half a cup of pine nuts, and I'm heating my pan just a little bit. Now, this isn't something you can walk away from. Pine nuts have a lot of oil in them. They're going to burn very quickly. So you need to babysit this. You need to stand with it and you need to move it around. So we're just going to pour those in. Again, there's nothing in the pan, no oil, no additions of any kind. And if you've ever made stovetop popcorn, you know what to do next. So you're just going to shake. Yeah, and the pan gets hot. Now, a lot of other things that I try to do in the kitchen, I'll be like, oh, I can set that on. Like this one you have to stick with. You can also roast these in the oven as well if it's not full with your other stuff. But again, you want to set a timer and keep an eye on it because I always store my pine nuts in the freezer because of their oily nature and to keep them from going rancid so quickly. We're getting a little bit of browning. So you want a little browning. You want to toast them just enough so that they get really aromatic. They start to exude a little bit of oil when you do that. You could also use any of your favorite nuts if you can tolerate tree nuts. So pecans would be nice in this. One of my other favorite things is pumpkin seeds toasted. That goes really well with this, especially using a winter squash or a pumpkin. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. But I also want to show you when everything comes out of the oven. Here are those lovely caramelized onions. And I'll show you the radicchio. Now this radicchio, I did 8 minutes on one side and then flipped them over and did 3 minutes on the other. So we've got some caramelization, but you can still see the color of the radicchio, and that's what I really want here. Tossing my clock. We're getting a little bit of color on there, and I'm trying not to distract myself before it's over. I'm going to pull the squash out because we should be getting some caramelization there. We're getting a little bit on the edges, and we're completely done in here now. There we go. We're going to go ahead and pull that out for time's sake. And should be about ready. Yeah, we're getting some lovely smells off those pine nuts. Now, you also want a little bit of chopped parsley. I've already pulled a lot of my leaves off, and I'm just going to bunch that and sort of press it in together and chop that up. You don't need this really minced tiny, just a rough chop is fine. You could use other herbs. Sage would be nice with this if you're getting sage in your box. All right, we've got some nice color on these pine nuts, so I'm going to turn that off. And we're going to chop up a few pieces of our onion. Now, you left that core on, and again, it's not very pleasant to chew on the core. So I'm going to chop down toward that core and use that core almost as a little handle. I'm not going to do all of these, but enough to give you an idea. And then you're going to do the same with the radicchio. If you did not par cook and or chunk up your butternut enough, you want to do that as well.
Chef T, would you mind moving your camera to your cutting board again?
Right, I had it over on the
folks might be excited to see your chopping.
Saute pan. There we go. Thank you, Katie. And I'm going to take a few pieces of the radicchio and do the same thing. Just cut down to the core. Big chunks, bite size. You want this to fit on a fork. While I'm doing that too, I'm going to heat up a saute pan with kale. We're going to go about medium high on that. I do have a cover for my pan. We're going to get that ready for the beautiful kale that I have. That's that core away. If you've got some little charred pieces that are almost like chips, that's phenomenal phenomenal. I love that. You can do that with Brussels sprouts too, to make almost like a chip. So I've got the onion and the radicchio chopped up. We have the butternut out of the oven. I'm going to place that in the bowl. I'm going to get some of that butternut. Let me grab that. I'm going to go mostly with the chunks in this part. If we have time, I can show you a little bit fancier plating. So put the chunks in. All that beautiful color. We've got the purples, got the oranges. I might throw in a couple of those just for some color balance. They're really nice and soft to the bite now. See that beautiful mix together. Everything is pre-seasoned, but you might want to taste a bite and then season again. I'm going to put just another pinch on. We've got those pine nuts we can add in. Some of the parsley. And then at the very end, you can put in a little bit of parm. For this, I'm just going to grate. It says to taste. So whatever, you know, when you want to say when. And if you feel like it's on the sweet side, you can put in a little bit of vinegar. This is actually a little bit of white balsamic instead of regular balsamic. It's a little bit sweeter. So we're going to counteract some of that bitterness. And then we set that aside. I have the kale already chopped up here, but I wanted to show you. This is the young, beautiful kale from an organic farm in Casey County. And you just strip the leaves off. Roll them up, bunch them up, cut them into ribbons, and then to make sure that they're bite size, you want to cut across those ribbons into a large chop. We'll add a little garlic to that. We're just going to slice, again, another rough chop. So I pop that paper off. I'm going to turn my heat down on my pan just a wee bit. Pop that paper off, and then you just slice. And again, there's a little hard woody end. We slice toward that. We kind of use that end to hold on to, and then we toss it away. I've got a little bit of olive oil here, a little bit of stock, and some vinegar to finish. So I'm going to lift you back up, and I'll try to remember to put it down so that we're over here on the saute pan. I'm going to put a little bit of the olive oil in the pan, about 2 tablespoons or so. Yeah, it's a hot one. And then my kale has quite a bit of water on it, which is a good thing because that's going to help it wilt and steam down. So a little salt, pepper, the garlic, and that's going to help flavor that oil as well. And then I have a little bit of stock. You can use water, you can use veggie stock. I'm going to pour that on. Get just a little bit more water. Put that lid on and let it steam for about 2 minutes. Maybe not even that long at this heat. And then we can throw our plates together. Let me grab that. Okay, so we've got our mix over there. We're about to come up with the kale. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's quick. Look at that beautiful green color. And you want to take the lid off and turn it up on medium high, and you want to work all of that liquid out of there. For the sake of time today, I'm going to push you back down on the cutting board. And I'm going to lift some of this up. And you make a little bed. And if you want to get fancy in your plating, you can offset it just from the center a little bit, like that, like so. And that way, when you can add your other veggies sort of in a cascade off that bed. We've got a big one. We'll just re-center that. And that's how you have it when everything's sort of mixed in. Let's clean up this plate. I'll show you one other way to do it. If you're having this for a fancy dinner party and you want to zhuzh it up just a little bit, you start the same way. Only you center the kale a bit more, maybe even build it up some. And then you leave your radicchio in the chunks. You leave everything in the chunks and sort of fan it. And then that means this is more of a knife and fork salad than just a fork salad. Some of the onion to curl around almost like a tail. And then you can see why I cut half moons so it can drape over in this repeating pattern that you just keep tiling. Then you can still sprinkle on your pine nuts or pepitas just around the plate. And for this, I would take a peeler for my Parmesan cheese so that I get big shaves like they do in restaurants. And you can put those around the plate. And for me, for a final touch, I have a little bit of cider reduction. I just put on some apple cider, reduced it down. That's a lovely fall thing, so I can go around the plate like that. There's also pumpkin seed oil is beautiful with this because it is a dark olivey green. So there's two ways to plate up this beautiful fall dish. And I welcome any questions.
Looks great, Chef T. I wish we were there to enjoy it with you. Looks so yummy. Just want to pause for a second to make sure there aren't any last minute questions before we wrap up. Okay, well, hearing none, I just want to remind folks again, well, first of all, thank you so much, Chef T, for sharing this delicious recipe. Lots more recipes can be found on the Food Connections website. And we are thrilled that you're joining us this season and hope you'll join us again next season as we continue to offer this workplace wellness CSA voucher program to our employees. Reminder that we've doubled the budget for next year, so twice as many folks can participate. So please encourage your coworkers and friends to participate next year if they haven't. More to come at the end of the year about specific dates and deadlines, but we do anticipate having a January lunch and learn again where you'll be able to meet all of the farmers and likely in a virtual format, but TBD. So just look for emails from me and enjoy the rest of your CSA bounty for this season. Still a few weeks left, and we hope you're enjoying it. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Katie dropped in the recipe in the chat, and we'll be sure to send that out as well. So thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.